Good morning, everyone. Welcome to MHub Modern Solution webinar series. So this morning, we are actually going to share about the data-driven decisions in property marketing and sales. So before I go into it, just a quick questions. How many of you are actually aware that the NAPIC Property Market Report 2021 was just out on 1st April? Let's have an interaction. You can actually use chat here. Okay, if you're actually aware that NAPIC actually was out on 1st April, can you give me one, please? We have a lot of people actually joining. Thank you very much. Let's have a look. Yes, more. Give me more feedback. Yeah. All right. Yes. So I'm sure that you would have come across with some of the articles mentioned that NAPIC property market improved, okay, in 2021, but somehow it still remained challenging, okay, or like overhang issue due to the poor project planning research by the property developer. Okay, but despite all of that, business must carry on, right? So developer, we still need to build, we need to continue engaging our potential buyers, okay, and bring them about your upcoming product. Okay, so it's hard to overstate the importance of the data or the right data. Okay, but how can a property industry, okay, can get actionable, up-to-date, location-specific data based on development and also the marketing needs? So yes, you are here today because you want to find out how AI-driven, okay, consumer insight platform, okay, and how to market to transform the customer experience, okay, and also eventually increase the revenue. So let me briefly introduce our speaker today. So he is a managing consultant of Rascasse Asia, a tech-based market research company that leverage AI and also machine learning to deliver the real holistic audience intelligence. He has previously held multiple leadership roles in companies across ASEAN, including a Fortune 100 companies. So ladies and gentlemen, let's just welcome our esteemed guest, Mr. Samuel Yao. Hi Samuel, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yeah. So when I actually do a research about this a topic, right? Data driven, and also AI. So I come across this very interesting a sentence. It says, "Being smart with data is the first and most important step on the way to being smart with marketing budget." Is that true?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, you need to have a direction when you spend your budgets. That's what we're here to discuss and to share some insights
Yes.
on.
Yeah, so the floor is all yours. I hope we can actually share some tips to our developer because we have a lot of our developers. Most of them is actually a developer. Okay, on the tips how, okay, and to increase the revenue. So the floor is all yours, Samuel.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, good morning, everybody. Salam Ramadan for those who are celebrating, and also today it's Good Friday. So for those who are celebrating Easter as well, happy Good Friday to you. I'd like to thank you, MHub, for this time and the opportunity to be able to share. I'd like to thank all the participants. I know people are trickling in still, but I'm really glad that you have chosen to spend time with us this morning. So I'll try to do my best to make sure that your time is not wasted. And as I'll be sharing a couple of insights and as well as some probably a bit more practical stuff that you can take away. And hopefully that even in this short session itself, you'll be able to take a thing or two and straight away implement it onto how you run your business. Okay, so I hope everyone is ready. So stand back, relax. It's a Friday after all. Let's sit back and learn. Okay, I'm going to be switching my screen right now to my slides. All right, so today what we're going to be talking about is really how can we use data to drive decisions in real estate. I'll be honing on to things related to marketing and sales, but I'll be also briefly talk a bit about how data can be using, but I'll be focusing more on alternative data, on how it can be used also for feasibility study and more. All right, so the first thing I think we need to establish the truth here, and this would be a fact. I mean, since 2020 itself, we do know that since the pandemic hit, things have changed. Consumer habits have changed, customer habits have changed. What we do, what we consume, how we use things have changed. But I think one thing that we need to realize is things perhaps have changed much faster than what we could have imagined or what we could have predicted. And sometimes it is in fact much, much further away or faster than what we could have really anticipated. I mean, if you think about it, there was a point in pandemic where Clubhouse became the most talked about media tool, and overnight it became really the top one, and then suddenly it went down again. And then we've got things like people jumping onto TikTok, people doing a lot of experimentation on how to get their business and word out. So, and all this have changed the way how consumers have consumed the things that they used to do. The habits have changed, behaviors have changed, like I mentioned. So because of that, business have to change and adapt as well. But if you were to think about all the changes that's happening, it's really humanly impossible to keep up with a lot of these things which are going on. I mean, if you were to think of it, I'm sure there are marketers here who have explored tons and tons of marketing tools to use for their business. I mean, I did a quick search as well. In the past 2 years since the pandemic hit, there has been almost 5,000 to 7,000 new marketing tools that was launched to help marketers with their business. So if you think of it, there's so many tools out there mining a lot of data, because one thing that has become really true is that data has become increasingly more important, and that's why we're here this morning. And the main thing that is helping us to analyze a lot of this tool, because humanly we aren't able to do it, is artificial intelligence. And AI has actually helped us to understand the different behaviors and understand the different changes which are happening. And we have machine learning helping to predict things as things goes along. I mean, so we'll be speaking a bit about this too, but I think the first thing I would like to establish is the world has changed much faster than it is. I'm just going to start with a quote over here by Tim O'Reilly. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Tim O'Reilly, but you probably have heard about the things that he has major influence on. Things like open source data, open source software, Web 2.0, big data, maker spaces. I think these are things that you probably have heard of, and that's where Tim O'Reilly has been spearheading those efforts. And he mentioned this not today, but 10 years ago, that we are entering a new world in which data may be more important than software. And this was something that he said 10 years ago, and that was the time he understood that data is extremely important. And this has been further backed up by a study by McKinsey Global Institute, where it says that data-driven organizations are 23 times more likely to acquire customers, 6 times more likely to retain them, and 19 times more likely to be profitable. So there is evidence out there that data is important, data is it is useful, and data can be beneficial. But the question would be, how can data be used to solve the challenges that we face today? In fact, how can data be used to solve the challenges that we face today in the real estate industry? All right. So in the past few months, I have actually done a couple of presentations. I mean, on behalf of Rascasse. At the same time, also I wear another hat as a marketing consultant. So I actually do help companies with their marketing efforts as well. And here are some of the challenges that I have actually heard from real estate developers. I won't say who, but speaking to a few of them, they did share with me, like, for example, from a developer standpoint, right? We have developed the property, but we're unable to sell it. And this is not something just unique to Malaysia. I mean, I work with companies in Singapore and other countries as well. So these are some of the, I would say, unique, yet unique to the real estate industry, but general across property developers. There's another developer that told me that I have insufficient data to develop a new township in a new area because it hasn't been explored before. We don't have enough data in that area. Smaller companies have also shared with me that they have challenges in going up against bigger, more established brands because they're new, nobody knows them. So there's some trust that needs to be built first. And that compounded by the increasing cost of materials as well as the cost of labor, sorry, means they need to perhaps price their houses higher or lower their margins, but in whatever case, it is higher risk to them. I mean, that's only from a developer side of things. And speaking to marketing, I mean, the usual thing is we don't get enough quality leads. The cost per lead is increasing. The marketing ROIs has been on declining, or we can't get the marketing ROIs that we want. We have analytics, but some of this analytics that we have, it's leading us to plan some plans which leads to inaccuracy. At the same time, also, they also shared with me, I mean, the announcement of things going cookieless in the advertising world, it's challenging. How can we face that kind of future? I mean, Facebook itself mentioned that they lost $10 billion because of the new privacy settings by Apple, because you won't be able to target as how you used to already, right? So a lot of changes happening on the algorithm side of things from a digital marketing standpoint, right? So there's a lot of challenges from marketing side, from leasing side. They also share with me that planning the right tenant mix, it's actually much harder right now because people's behavior has changed since before the pandemics. They've already been changing, but during the pandemic has changed. And now as we come off the pandemic or towards endemic phase, the behaviors are also different, right? So how then should I plan the right tenant mix that will generate the traffic that I want to my development? I mean, shopping, I work with shopping malls as well, right? So they share the same sentiment as well. And then we've got also people who are saying that I'm trying to convince brands and companies to come set up in my new township, in my new building and all, but the companies there, they are not fully convinced. They are very cautious in terms of what brands they should be launching. Should I be opening up my retail store in your shopping malls, in your new township? Should I be opening up a restaurant in your mixed development, etc.? I mean, there's a lot of questions being asked there. And of course, ultimately, the brand that face it all is the salespeople said, I can't convert because you keep sending me the wrong customer profile. I mean, these people aren't even interested in buying the properties. I call them up. They weren't as per what they say it was. I mean, the quality of the leads is bad. I mean, there's a lot of challenges, which I think these are things that I empathize with and I understand. So the question is, how can data be used to solve some of these challenges, or at least help to answer some of the questions that you may have? And that's why we are here this morning. All right. So the question I'd like to pose is really like, how do you get ahead of then your competition industry, right? So I mean, I've managed brands like Gillette, like Downy, CTOS, and even education groups before. And one of the things that I've learned in my past 15 years of running businesses is really how well do I know my target audience, right? And I grew up with that mindset, is where if I know who my audience is, who I'm going after, what their pain points are, what their motivations, where they are located, what drives them, how can I add value to them, etc. That's all the who that you see right in the middle of this circle. Because if I know my audience well enough, I am able to communicate with them in a relevant manner that makes sense, that talks about their pain points, talks about how I can add value to their life. And then I am able to demonstrate that in the things that I do, the way how I look, the communication that goes out to them in the way that is relevant to them, whether if it's on video or an advertising on print or even a simple conversation. I mean, the more I know about my audience, the more I'm able to serve them better. And Jeff Bezos summarized this very, very clearly as he was building Amazon up. I mean, he mentions that we live in the age where the customer rules, right? You cannot interrupt customer experience to push your agenda anymore. You have to learn to add to their experience and pull them in. And to do this, understanding the customer's point of view is imperative, right? And that was how he built entire Amazon when it was still like an online bookstore to what it was today. And he made this part of the agenda that everything has to be there to serve the customer. All right. And this is true not just for an e-commerce business like Jeff Bezos. I mean, he runs the same for his other space program as well. And this is also true if you talk to people from HubSpot, from people from shopping malls to retailers to the media industry to consumer goods. Most of them would understand, if I'm able to understand my audience better than anybody else, better than my competition, better than what I do know now, I am able then to better serve them. So that's what we are going to do today. All right. So just to lay some of the foundation, because I'm not here to say that, okay, I don't know my audience, therefore I need to spend money on getting to know them. There are ways right now that you are able to get to know them, right? But really it's understanding what data sources can be used to answer what questions for me to understand my target audience. So with the who in the middle over here, you probably have your own data. I mean, this is what I would call first-party data, right? You probably have data of customers that have already purchased from you. I mean, that's one way to get to know the customers who are already interested in you and would like to buy you or already have bought you. So you have already some first-party data. You probably have also other analytics tools from Google, from Facebook, or even from social media listening and other analytics to be able to tell you who are already those who are interested in you. You'll probably be able to also spend a bit of money, or you have probably done that to spend on some focus group, run some surveys to understand what's going on, what the sentiments, why people are acting such as that. And you probably also have talked to your own staff, right? I mean, the salespeople on the ground who are really talking to the customer on a day-to-day basis. They probably have understanding of what people are feeling, what people are saying, or even maybe you said, I don't have this data right now, but I know where I can get this data. So I go and buy this data, right? And that's where second-party data come in. You buy their databases and then you shoot off your advertising message over to them. Or the other one would be third-party data, where you're buying data to find out in more global sense what is it's going on, or in regional sense, or data that you never knew that you needed, that you would want, right? And that's where third-party data. Now there are pros and cons to each of these data sources. I mean, there will be some that you will probably get a lot more biases. I mean, like surveys is based on what people are saying, what people are feeling, but they may not be doing, right? You've got analytics will probably give you data of your own platforms, but you don't have full understanding of your competitor or what really is going on out there. And you probably have even understand your own stuff, but it will be very sporadic and all these things. It may not be fully representative of the entire target audience that we're going to go through. So there are pros and cons to each. I wouldn't say one is more important than the other. I believe that each different sets of data sources give you different data points so that you can understand the whole picture as much as you can, right? So the next question is then, okay, once I know who the people who I think I know my target audience are, how can I use this to drive? The question would be, where then is my next growth opportunity, right? And working with businesses and all, I've come to realize that a lot of companies, they would work with first-party data on their own. So this one will probably be telling me questions like what I need to know that I already should know. So what you know over here. Second, third-party data will probably tell me things that I don't know, but I go out and find out things that I need to know, very targeted, going after what I need to know, and I buy the data that I need to know, that I should know. But the beauty of third-party data, and this is where when you, where Rascasse actually sits from a third-party data standpoint, is it's telling you things that you don't know that you actually don't know, all right? And this could be things which are maybe lower competition, or some people might call it blue ocean strategy or whatnot, but it's really helping you to understand areas of opportunities that you may not have thought of before. All right. So just establishing this part, I'm going to be jumping into a couple of insights to share with you. And this is where hopefully you'll be able to add some value to your business. But just to explain where we will be coming from. So I come from this company called Rascasse. It's an audience intelligence tool that's been developed by a tech firm based out of Europe. We are relatively new in Asia, but not to say that we don't have data in Asia, because the data that Rascasse collects is globally what you call relevant, right? But the way how Rascasse position itself, it's really, we want to change everything that companies knows about consumer insights, because we want to help companies to know their audiences better than before. So in a nutshell, what Rascasse is, it's basically an AI-powered audience intelligence tool that aims to deliver the most accurate consumer insight. And it does this by analyzing the world's most used platforms, from social media, search engine, e-commerce, across 200 over countries, 100,000 over cities. And in some countries, it can even analyze up to a postcode level or even radius level. And what Rascasse is doing, it is actually observing on people's online behavior. So what people are actually doing online, and then they create unique, measurable, geographical based insight. So just to establish that now, why interest is important over here. And so if you're aware of how a path to purchase happens, right? For someone to actually buy, they first need to be aware of you, aware of your brand, right? They might look at you and they say, wow, I've never heard of you before. Okay, first time hearing it. Then you probably spend more money, maybe 7-8 times frequency, just to get them to be aware of you more often. So that's money spent up here to get people to be aware of your brand. Then until they get certain interests, they say, okay, I've heard about you already. Okay, I want to find out more. So that's where they perhaps saw your advertising on their LinkedIn or on Facebook or other platforms, and they click, said, yes, I would like to find out more about you. So that click itself is a sign of interest, right? So that is something that Rascasse is picking up. So that's one of the interaction that Rascasse is picking up to analyze as an interest. It's the same thing that Facebook uses to analyze interest as well, which is the foundations for all advertising. Because you're actually, when you buy on Facebook, on Google and all, you're actually buying based on people's interests. All right. So once people are interested in you, they send in their lead, and that's when you start to talk to them, you engage with them, you try to sell to them, then only to convert. All right. So this is where Rascasse it's taking its data. It's actually finding out interest. And then why interest is important is because so I was doing a quick search and I was mapping this out with the latest NAPIC data that came out, right? So on the left-hand side, you'll see the cities in Malaysia, which region they're from. The total that you see over here right in the middle is Rascasse's data of how many people are interested in apartments and condos, all right? Affinity over here would be how much more interested are they in condos as compared to the country's average. So basically, the higher the affinity means that they are more interested in it as compared to the country average. The lower it is means that's most likely that they are not interested in apartments in this particular city, right? And I was mapping it with the NAPIC data to show how many has been sold, how many has been launched in the past 3 quarters. And just this simple mapping, I didn't put all the data in, but this simple mapping already can show me an indication of whether a project may be successful or not. So take, for example, like Seremban, Kuala Pilar, Kuantan, Bentong, Temerloh, those items that I've quoted rate, interests on apartments are actually lower than 1, which means that the interest it's lower. It could also be interpreted that there is a high likelihood that if I were to launch an apartment or condo in these cities, it may not sell as well, because if interest is low, imagine how many people might be even inquiring and would actually buy. Okay, so firstly, the interest level, it's already low, but you might look at it and say, all right, in Seremban, we've got 53,000 people who are interested in apartments, right? I mean, that's still a sizable number. In Kuantan, we've got 32,000. It's still sizable. 6,000, there's a few. It's still sizable. So there is still a opportunity for me if I were to launch something. But if you were to slice and dice it to, let's say, further filtering it down to my project brand name, right? As well as maybe to the types of property, whether if it's a luxury real estate, depending on your price points and all, right, then the numbers goes down significantly. So take, for example, over here in this graph, right, there's 2.2 million people who are interested in apartments in the whole of Malaysia. All right, on the right-hand side, this is 200,000 people who are interested in prima homes in the whole of Malaysia, right? If I were to overlap the audience, out of the 2.2 million people who are interested in apartments, how many of them are interested in a prima apartment, for instance, right? And this will come up to about 35,000. So in the whole of Malaysia, there's 35,000 people who are interested in apartments and prima homes at the same time. So, one way I can interpret this would be there's about 35,000 people in the whole of Malaysia who are interested in a prima apartment. So out of 35,000, what is the high likelihood of me converting them into actual leads and then eventually converting them into actual sales? All right. So, I mean, it depends on what conversion table that you might want to ask, but I mean, some people might say, okay, maybe 5% or 2% or 3%. Whatever the numbers, this will give you an indication of whether is it enough for me to either start a project or is it enough people for me to market. If it's not meaningful enough for me, where else can I look for me to sell to? All right, so that will be a question, but at least through this, you are able to get a quick sense of, okay, is it, am I going after the right target audience in the first place? Okay, so this is how simple data interest will be able to tell from a property development standpoint whether it be successful or not, and the markets too. Is it enough for me to market to? So for the rest of this presentation, so going to be breaking down to two sections over here, right? So the next part is focused a lot more on insights. I'll be sharing with you some insights from that. From Rascasse on who these audiences are, people who are interested in terrace houses compared with people who are interested in apartments in Malaysia. And then after that, if we have time, I'll jump into this section where I cover some of the most common mistakes that I see people make and how data can be used to solve or at least help with the challenges that marketers and sales face. All right, you guys still with me?
Yes, right. Yes. I actually asked them to take a screenshot because now it is the most important moment. Right, so yeah, so feel free to ask questions and we will try to address them at the end of the live Q&A.
Yes. All right. Okay, so let's jump into some of this interest data. So over here, I took a couple of screenshots on what interest as of February, right? As of February, what were the interest on different types of properties in Malaysia and how has it been trending? So over here, you would see on the gated community. On the left-hand side, you will see there's 340,000 people who are interested in gated communities. In the middle with the lines, you would see that's how the trends are. I mean, at the start of March, April 2021, it was starting to trend up a bit and then it started to drop and then it went up. But then in the past few months, it has been on a declining trend. And on the right-hand side, you can see what the shares, the female share, that means the gender split between male and female. So on gated community, it's 45% of them who are showing this interest are female, and the average age is 7 years old of the people who are interested in gated community, right? So you would see in bungalow, there's 1.6 million, apartment 2.2 million, terrace houses 1.7 million people, luxury real estate, 680,000 people are interested in luxury real estate in Malaysia. But looking into all the different trends, one thing I think it's a fact, and I think you probably feel it yourself as real estate developers, things are definitely slowing down. I mean, interest will always come before the actual purchase itself, but even interest, we do see a declining trend across the different types of apartments already. So I was asking myself, what other types of development out there or other types of property that are also trending up or trending down? So I dig a bit deeper, and that's where I look into things like townhouses, which are also in a way, it has declined and flattened down. Service apartment has picked up, but it's also starting to do down. Now, interestingly, penthouses is actually, it actually picked up, right? Duplexes has sort of flattened, Soho has picked up and then flattened and then went down. Semi-D has also started to see a decline, but with a slight uptick in February. But I think overall it is on declining trend. So that is overall in Malaysia. Of course, we may see different trends if we zoom into different regions, different cities and all. But I won't do that here today. I mean, if you would like to find out more, feel free to reach out to MHub or myself, and we can look into even more insights. But what I would like to establish over here is really different types of properties types. You will get different insights. Some are going up, some are going down. If you were to look into the demographics as well, it may look like everything is roughly the same age, roughly the same gender split, but it will be very different if I zoom into one. I mean, take for example, over here, luxury real estate, right? The average age is significantly lower compared to the other property. So this could be something that I might want to zoom in. Could there be people who are younger, willing to spend more? Do they have more disposable income, etc.? I mean, those are things that I would probably want to look into, because this may change the way how I target my audience. This may change the way how I go and communicate with them, right? So I'm going to be doing an interesting exercise over here, and hopefully you guys will be able to pick up a couple of points. I'm going to drill down into a specific profile. And this is people who are interested in terrace houses in Malaysia. All right. And the reason why I choose terrace houses is really because in the past 3 quarters, there were the most number of terrace houses that was launched and unsold in Malaysia. So I think that could probably be a challenge that we would like to take on. But I also do some comparison with people who are interested in apartments and condos, so that you are able to see side by side how the different demographic, psychographic, and behaviors of 2 different target audience. All right. So I think overall, we do know that terrace houses is on a declining trend, but let's zoom in a bit further in terms of where these people are located. You can see that people interested in terrace houses are really mostly located in KL, Shah Alam, PJ. I mean, that's from an overview, but how much more interested are there in terrace houses as compared to the other? And so we'll zoom into that in a bit. Now, the general audience that you will see over here, people who are interested in terrace houses, are between the 25 to the 44-year-old. I mean, it counts for 66% of this audience. They are married with kids, living in large cities, and they're smart. I mean, most of them are college graduates as well. But they do have some pretty young kids. I mean, below 5 years old, as well as the 5 to 12 years. So these are really young parents looking at spaces, etc. I mean, you may not intuitively know this already based on what you are selling. But the question that I would like to pose is the audience actionable enough yet to build marketing plans? Because most likely what I know from here is what my competition may know as well, what my other peers might know as well. So how can I differentiate myself versus my competition and all? And that's where we start to zoom in to understanding this audience a bit more. So like just now I mentioned, right, we did see that there's a lot of people who are interested in terrace houses are located in Kuala Lumpur, in Selangor region. But if I was to zoom into the cities itself, I'll be able to see how much more interested are they in terrace houses. And this is where the affinity comes in again. So for those of you who have just joined, affinity basically will give me an indication of how much more interested are they in this particular object as compared to the country average. So the higher the affinity means that they're more interested in it. The lower the affinity, that means they're least interested in it. So I'll be able to see that the people who are more interested in terrace houses are really in the major cities like Kuala Lumpur, Shah Alam, PJ, Klang, Ipoh, Seremban. But in Kuching, despite being a major city as well, we do see the affinity is actually quite low. So if I were to launch a project in Kuching for terrace houses, there is a high likelihood that I may not get the sales that I want, right? Similarly, in Kuantan, Kota Kinabalu, or Kuala Terengganu as well. In fact, Kuala Terengganu, I may not even consider launching any project right now related to the terrace houses because the interest is low, the number of people also is low. All right. So this is where it is now. Having said that, also now Kuala Lumpur is still a very big city. It's still 310,000. You may say, oh, it's still big. Affinity is high. Therefore, my project might be successful. I mean, it could be a yes, it could be no. We need to go in even deeper because Kuala Lumpur is still a big city itself. If I would slice and dice it based on the brands that my developer brand or the type of property, this 310,000 may drop to 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 in Kuala Lumpur itself. Then that will be the number of people that I'm going after, and the affinity might change as well, right, based on that. But for this particular session, I'll keep it to more general for now. All right. So then the question would be, even if there's interest, is there sufficient enough people to target? Okay. So I did another deeper dive over here, right? How does this audience differ to the people who are interested in apartments? Are the people who are looking at terrace houses are also looking to apartments and condos and all, and who are these people? So I did an overlap of this audience, and this is what I call emotional mapping, just to understand what their mindset would be like, right? And I can clearly see that people who are interested in terrace houses, things like quality, security are important to them, right? So this is where the outliers are. As compared to people who are interested in apartments, things like mindfulness, extroversion, they are more extroverted, etc. Things like LGBTQ, etc. They're slightly more higher compared to people who are interested in terrace houses, right? So that even from a consumer mindset standpoint, it's already starting to show that the people who are interested in terrace houses and people who are interested in condos are two very different sets of people. But I'll be sharing some cool insights later on how does this audience overlap and how much do they overlap. All right, but from a starting standpoint, we need to really start thinking that the people who are interested in terrace houses and people who are interested in apartments are most likely two different groups of people. Okay. I mean, if you have any questions, feel free to just put it down into the Q&A or into the chat group. We can go through some of these questions later as well. Okay. All right, so jumping into understanding their lifestyle, and really understanding their lifestyle, these are the people who are interested in terrace houses. We like to understand also what else that they are interested in. So, I mean, if you are a property developer who are developing terrace houses, I mean, these are things that you would like to take note of. But at the same time, also the caveat is that this is for total Malaysia. It will be different if I were to zoom into different cities and regions, all right, or even from a, let's say, radius level. All right, but for this particular presentation, we'll focus a lot more on in general in total Malaysia. So for people who are interested in terrace houses, you can start to see that things like travel and leisure, cars, mobility, business, career, politics, in fact, home and garden, food, beverage, health, all these things are more important to them as compared to other things. All right, so let's do another deep dive, right? So home and garden shows here, it's really high, 2.29 affinity. That means people who are interested in terrace houses are very much interested in things related to home and garden. So let's zoom in a bit to understand within home and garden, what are they interested in particularly. So if I zoom in further, I can look at things that stood out to me straight away are bathroom. People who are interested in terrace houses are also very interested in bathroom. They're also interested in kitchen cabinets, in kitchen and home appliances. I mean, these are things which you see they have high reach and at the same time also high affinity, right? So these are things that I may, even from an idea standpoint, right, I may choose to emphasize, maybe highlighting kitchens, bathrooms. I may focus maybe my my photography on this particular areas a bit more. I might zoom in and talk about the kitchen a bit more, talk about bathroom, because it seems like these are things that are important for the people who are interested in terrace houses. And the reason why I'm so emphasizing it, because before this session, I was going through some of the developers' websites, and I was quite surprised because not many developers actually have photos or gallery views of kitchens and bathrooms. A lot of people who are selling terrace houses are focusing more on the townships, focus a lot on what goes on the outside. All right, but from data, it's telling us that they are also interested in things which are going on inside the house. And if I were to look into, so I can start already thinking who my consumers are like from a terrace house, right? We know that they are young families having children. They are interested in bathrooms, in kitchens over here. So I can start to think about, all right, if that's the case, how should I position my kitchen and my bathroom? The kitchen should be a place where families maybe can get together. The mom can be spending time with the kid to teach the child how to cook, and it could be a family moment, right? So that could be some ideas of how you can tell the story for people who are interested in terrace houses. Like I mentioned, caveat, it's total Malaysia. It may not be true for when it goes down to specific city, but in general, this is what the data is showing. The other thing also, it shows that they are also interested in home appliances. So I did a double click what specific home appliances brands that they might be interested in, right? Or even furniture brands that they might be interested in. And that's where things like IKEA, Haier, Samsung, Tefal, Dyson, I mean, this were some of the brands that popped up as they have quite a meaningful reach and affinity. All right, so maybe from a marketing partnership standpoint, can I partner with some of these companies? Or even better, right? Even as I were to decorate up my, let's say my showrooms and all, I actually use these brands. Like, can I work with IKEA to tell them that, hey, I want you to work with you with a package. If somebody were to buy my terrace house and all, can you help to deck up the whole entire place with IKEA property, and we can work some sort of partnership deal. I mean, it's just an idea. They may say yes, they may say no, but using data, at least that's what it's telling us. Hey, who knows, maybe even by showing this data, IKEA might even consider something that they haven't considered before, right? So that's something that we can look into. So looking into this data, it might spur on either ideas. So the other thing that we also look into is that food and beverage was something that was high interest to them. So looking into deeper, what specifically within food and beverage were they interested in? So you can see the high affinity and some sort of high reach as well. Drive-throughs, delivery are important to them. So I'm not sure for those developers, if you are going to be selling your terrace houses, would you be including communication like, all right, in my township itself, we have Food Panda delivery, we have Grab deliveries. In fact, most of the McDonald's, the brands that we have in our township, they also do deliveries. I mean, these are things that we may not have thought of, but true data is telling us that, hey, these are things that it's running on people's mind, and they may want to know about it. So if as a salesperson as well, you can start thinking, how can you sell better, right? Because if these are things which are important to the customer, then these are things that you should be talking about. All right. So zooming into food and beverage, we can see that drive-through delivery, it's important to them. In fact, I then zoom into which brands that is important to them. You can see over here, McDonald's, KFC, I mean, Starbucks, Pizza Hut, Burger King, these are brands which have, which are also of interest to the people who are interested in terrace houses. So in fact, if you're a developer who are developing a township and you're trying to convince people to even open up, or trying to invite brands to come into your new township and all, I mean, these are data that you can in fact use to show them that this could be your size of price, right? And they might consider that because they might not have done the feasibility study as you have done with this. All right. So this could be another idea, right? Focusing on food and beverage, which is important to them. So I also did another click through to understand, all right, what else could be important to them, right? So I zoom into things like shopping malls is important to them. So this will be probably an obvious thing, right? Because I think shopping mall is of high interest to most Malaysians, right? So really highlighting the distance to the nearest mall. In fact, we can even zoom into further, like which particular mall are they more people who are interested in terrace mall are also interested in, to even fine tune it further. But another thing that came up, motherhood was another topic that was of high interest. So this again solidifies that the people who are interested in terrace houses are really of young families. They're thinking of motherhood. They're thinking of the future, etc., thinking about kids and all. All right. So I can click on further to understand this further, but then I can use in my storytelling, like for instance, like I mentioned, mom cooking in the kitchen with the kids, or mom in the nearby park with their kids, things that helps to bring up the motherhood angle might be a sub campaign that property developers who have terrace houses can think of using, right? So as I'm telling and sharing this information, right, you can start to see how data can help you to form the communications, the kind of applications that you can use in your different marketing or even sales plans. All right. Okay, this one I forgot about this earlier, right? So I also added in, right, if I would compare the terrace houses and apartments over here, assuming that I'm developing both terrace houses and apartment, which touch points are more important than one to the other. So I did a quick comparison overlap over here, and you can see that common interests for both audience, shopping malls, coffee houses, theme parks, chain stores, boutiques. I mean, these are things which both commonly are important, but some clear outliers for terrace houses. You can see that things like charity shops, duty-free shops, farmer markets, farmers markets, right? Outlet stores, nail salon, optician, pharmacy, supermarkets are more important for the people who are interested in terrace houses as compared to people who are interested in apartments, right? Or in apartments and condos over here. So then I again solidifies that, all right, if families, definitely I'll be spending more time in maybe grocery stores and farmer markets, in the supermarkets as compared to people who are apartments, right? I mean, it'd be interesting for us to have another session that focuses just on people who are interested in apartments, but due to time, we'll just focus on one today. All right. So I also did a quick check in terms of what possibly could be a motivation for someone to buy a house. Are they looking into real estate investing, or they are first-time buyers, etc.? So I did a couple of overlaps. Now, rent to own, it's a scheme that, if I recall correctly, it's something that a few developers or even some of the banks have been pushing, where you can rent and then you can eventually buy the property. But looking into the data itself, in the total of Malaysia, there's about 120,000 who are interested in the rent to own. If I were to overlap that with the terrace houses, there's only about 35,000 people who are interested in terrace houses and rent to own, right? So if I have a communication that is focusing on rent to own and I'm really blasting it out, there's a high likelihood it won't be meaningful enough to get the sales that I want. All right, so this may not be an angle that I would like to focus on. Right. The other one is, I see a lot of developers also use real estate investing as one of the angles, or in fact, it's part of their interest targeting as they buy their media. It's true that it's meaningful enough. It's big. There's 1.3 million people in the whole of Malaysia who are interested in real estate investing, but overlapping this audience, you can see that only 240,000 people who are interested in terrace houses and real estate investing. All right. So the question would be, in the whole of Malaysia, is there enough people over here, and how interested are they in investing in terrace houses? All right. So that's another question that we can ask, and we can zoom in further if we need to. The other one would be also, if I were to target first-time buyers itself, how many of them are engaging, searching, reading up on being a first-time buyer, right? So in Malaysia, there's 620,000 of them. Overlapping the audience again, it's 200,000, right? So there's a question over here. I'm just going to cover real quick. What is real estate investing? So people who are really, interested in investing in properties, right? So this is as many people who are probably searching on things related to investing in real estate, or they might be clicking on ads related to real estate investing. It could be whatever interaction it is online that indicates that they are interested in real estate investing. So in fact, this is the exact same term that I see a lot of developers use in their interest targeting. All right. Okay, so let's quickly move on, right? So we know some of the insights, what they are interested in, what potentially is motivating them to buy. Now the question will be then how best to reach out to them. So through Rascasse, I'm also able to tell what other particular media that is relevant to reach out to this audience, and I can use it for various touch points, right? I can use it to drive my awareness, I can use it to drive consideration, or I can specifically use it to drive intention. All right. And this one will be able to tell me from an unbiased point of view which media platform is relevant to my audience. So from here, people who are interested in terrace houses, we can see that things like WhatsApp, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook is, I wouldn't say so important, but it has good reach, right? But the affinity isn't really high. So they are using it, but they may not be fully into it, right? But it may be a good touch point for me to drive awareness as compared to Google Maps, Waze and all. I think this is important for them. You can see affinity is high to drive consideration, because if I'm hearing about a project, the first thing I'll probably do is try to Google up to find out where exactly is this location. If I'm not available or I cannot be found on Google Maps or on Waze, there is a high likelihood that the person will drop off, right? So it's important then to be present on Google Maps, on Waze, because it's important for the people who are interested in terrace houses, right? For me to drive consideration to see how far is that place, how long does it take to get from one location to another location. All right. Another interesting thing that came out, I mean, even Astro came out as something that has high affinity, and maybe zooming in, it might show Astro Avani could be a channel I may not have considered before. All right. Property Guru also shows it has high affinity, but from a reach standpoint, Property Guru may not be enough for me to go after the audience that I want. So that's when I can start to think about how should I be planning my media. In fact, data like this will be able to be used. I mean, if you work with your agencies, you can question them and say, have we considered Harian Metro before? Have we considered Sinar Harian? Have we considered Berita Harian? Have we considered other radio stations, etc.? I mean, there could be a lot of questions that you can, because at least Rascasse gives you an unbiased point of view of, it's really just stating out the facts, right? The people who are interested in terrace houses are also interested in this media platform. So this will give me an idea of how I can possibly plan my media, therefore increasing my marketing ROI and really maximizing my marketing efforts. All right. Question, how about TikTok? So you might not see TikTok over here, but it is in fact over here. I mean, over here is just the top few. If I were to show you Rascasse itself, there will be a few hundred media platforms that is available, and you'll probably see TikTok. So it depends on what my objectives are and the way how I would like to use it, right? If my objectives and my focus is purely focusing on social media only, I can do a quick search to see how relevant TikTok is, or even LinkedIn. I understand some of the developers have also started to go into LinkedIn. All right, I'm able to use this to understand, is LinkedIn important? All right. All right, so I can do that as well through this platform, but I didn't specifically show TikTok and LinkedIn here because most likely it's further down this page. All right, so what other types of properties are they looking at? So in the earlier phase, I did mention that, okay, for people who are looking into terrace houses, how many of them are looking into other types of properties? So I did the whole overlapping again, and it's interesting. I mean, people who are looking into terrace houses are also, quite a big chunk of them are also looking into semi-Ds as well. All right. Similarly, people who are looking into terrace houses, a big chunk of them also looking into bungalow spaces, right? So interest doesn't mean that they'll actually buy, but we know that they are clicking, researching on it. right? So this could be something that we can consider. I mean, especially for property developers who have multiple types of multiple types of property types. They'll be able to say, if this one doesn't sell, can I also interest you in other things? All right. And over here, we'll be able to pinpoint. I won't be then focusing on developments that don't make sense to them, right? I'll be focusing on developments that I know that they have shown some interest in. All right. And each of this audience, I can zoom in further on understanding what is their motivation and what their consumer behavior is like. Similarly, how can I look into people who are interested in terrace houses and apartments? It's not the whole big chunk of it, but there's still quite a sizable amount. All right. So I'm able to see already 3 different sets. And in the first set of data, we showed that the terrace houses and the people who are interested in apartments are 2 different set of audience, but there is about 690,000 of them which overlaps in between. And this could be another audience that I want to zoom into if I am a property developer that has both terrace houses and apartments as part of my portfolios. All right. Okay, so yeah, I mean, we can go on and on. We can even zoom in even further if I'm thinking about, okay, I understand that they're looking into families, and already I want to zoom into understanding what drives the females in the family. I can zoom in and find out that what other things which are important to them, like the 25 to 34-year-olds who are interested in terrace houses, kids' families are important, home and garden, beauty, wellness, food and beverage important to them as compared to the males, which actually cars and mobility, home and garden. So thinking of all this, I can already think about how can I start to differentiate my campaigns? How can I create sub-campaigns that might be talking to different audiences? And this is where we can start to think about how can we start to differentiate against the competition, etc. All right.
I see. Yeah, and just a fun fact, like, do you know what is actually the most expensive marketing? Do you all want to have a guess? Okay, yeah, it's actually when you market to the wrong target. So with the wrong audience profiling, lack of resources, inaccurate information, and less time chasing potential clients is intensify the issue. So it's very interesting that Sam, you actually shared about all those touch points, motivation to purchase, and I'm quite shocked about the emotional mapping. Like it's quite new for me. Yeah. So it's interesting. So predicting all these buyers' behaviors actually can boil down to spotting the signals of your buyer intentions. Okay, and if you actually do it sooner than your competitor and acting on the data information, you'll be a market leader. Is that true? Yeah. So that is actually lead to our next section. How can we, and the developer sell better? And of course, we heard about earlier a little bit on what is actually the audience intelligence. Is it the same like artificial intelligence, and how this AI data actually can help in making decision?
Right. Now that's interesting. I mean, so in the first section, we focus a lot on how the more we know about our consumers, the more we know about target audience, or in fact, maybe it could be the more we know about our competitors, it will help us to market better. It will help us to differentiate better. It will help us to figure out where could be my next growth opportunities, where, in fact, from a feasibility standpoint, where would be my next development take place, etc. Right? But I think for this section, following up to the question that Karen had just now, right, is how can audience intelligence or consumer insights help us to market and sell better? So this is where I'll probably be switching my hats from Rascasse to maybe I put on my marketing hats, because I also consult for companies across various industries, right? From shopping malls to education groups, to FMCGs, to media companies, etc. And so I do come across and work with a lot of CMOs, marketing directors, marketing teams, as well as sales teams, and throughout all these interactions, I discover, most of the time people make a lot of common mistakes that can be solved if they have the right data points. So for this section, it's going to be more of a very hopefully it's going to be a fun going session. I'm not here to pinpoint that you are making that particular mistake, but I think it's a point for us to learn of what could be the potential pitfalls and how we can go about correcting it, right? In fact, these are things that I can go about correcting it straight away, even whether I choose to work with Rascasse or not, right? So I'm ultimately, data is there to help us. I mean, from a marketing standpoint, right? Data is there to help me develop the right marketing strategy, because everything that I'm going to be doing, whether I'm going to be developing the right business strategy, the right marketing plans, etc., it all depends on what is my strategy, what would be my marketing strategy to go to market. All right, so data is really out there to help me answer my most important marketing questions, like what are my targeted customer segments? Is it only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Are each of these segments meaningful enough? Are there any other segments that I might be missing out on? Is it specific enough for it to be actionable, or is it too broad? I mean, this is what data is being used for, right? And then once upon knowing understanding who my consumers are, what their motivations, etc., I'm able to come up with a communication that's relevant to my target audience. It could be one audience, it could be 2, it could be 5, but for each of it, I have a very targeted communication to talk to them that is relevant, that speaks to their pain points, and be part of their journey, right? So that is where data can be used to understand what would be my right communication strategy. And then ultimately, from a how standpoint, data then also can be used to figure out what should be my the best media choices that are relevant to my audience, which are answering questions like, are my media spending choices giving me the right ROI? Is there any other things that I'm not considering? How should I go about changing? Are there any other touch points that I may not have considered before to bring my communication to life? Is the way how I'm bringing my communication to life, speaking, and being able to relate back to the terrace house example, right? If I'm speaking to moms, am I mother friendly to them, right? Or do they see me as, oh no, this is not for me, therefore I'm going to turn off, right? So I mean, these are all questions that data can help to answer, but ultimately the whole purpose of data is help you to build the right strategy, so that the right strategy will give you the clarity that you need. And ultimately, when you get the clarity that you need, you're able to get your business to grow effectively and efficiently, right? You do not want to be wasting resources on things that don't make sense or do not work, all right? And data will be able to help to eliminate as many of those inefficiencies and ineffectivity. Yes. All right. So I'm just going to cover a couple of quick things over here. So very openly sharing with you here. So here are some of the most common mistakes that I see most companies would make. I think the first one is missing out on potential customers. You probably might be familiar with some of these screenshots over here, right? On the left-hand side is, if you were to build Facebook, this is what you would start with, Facebook ads, right? They'll ask you, which gender are you going against? What's your age group? Where's the location? What you're targeting, all right? And then over here on Google, on YouTube, they will ask you the similar things. On TikTok, they also ask you similar things. And all these things is in a way forcing you to start defining your demographics upfront already. So it's very common for marketers to then send a brief to the agencies or to the people that's executing your marketing plans as such, where I'm saying I'm targeting people who are between the 24 to 30 years old, 35 years old, people who are of a parent, they're living in this city, of a certain income group, etc. And that becomes my target audience and becomes my brief to go into the marketing plan. Now, the danger in that is that I may be already making a wrong assumption, right? Because I may be missing out on people that I may not have even considered before, right? And this is where third-party data comes in. So this is just a picture over here, right? Assuming the green space is everybody who is interested in terrace houses, All right, if I'm already defining my target as people who are 30 to 65 years old, interested in luxury estate investments, they're interested in gated communities or also condos and bungalows at the same time, the people I may be targeting might be only, in this space, all right, where I may be missing out on another group of people who are interested in condos as well and bungalows, but I have never considered this before. All right, because I already have made the assumption that the people who can afford my properties are of a certain age group. And this is an actual case study that we've gotten out of Europe, right? So a bank was going after high net worth individual, and they have actually sent a brief out to the agency that please help me to look into people who are of 30 years old and above, of a certain income group, and interested in investments, etc., and a whole bunch of other interests. But then when they started to work with Rascasse, they looked into the data and they discovered that, in fact, there was a group of people who were interested in cryptos, in Bitcoins, in meme coins, in Shibus, in all those different cryptos who are also actually considered high net worth individual. And they have never considered before, because these were the folks that actually made a lot of money investing in cryptos. I mean, we wouldn't say maybe investing or trading in cryptos during the pandemic. In the 2 years' time, they became millionaires, right? But this would be a group of people I may not have considered before. But in fact, these were people that were actually looking at properties. They were looking into investment. They were looking into banks, and nobody was actually reaching out to them. So this particular bank in Europe created a campaign specifically for this group of people. All right. And guess what? This was where the major growth came from, because they realized that this was a really competitive space. A lot of people was going after them, but this group of people was some places, it was completely missed by other banks. All right. So missing out on potential customers, I would say that would be one common mistake. All right. The other common mistake would be that I've come across is marketers who try to target too broad. All right. And these are examples over here I've shown you, right? Sorry, I'm just going to drink water real quick. All right, sorry about that. All right, so just giving you a quick example. On the left-hand side, you would see that the people who are interested in terrace houses as shown by Facebook. All right, so if I were to target people who are looking into terrace houses itself, Facebook would show me 2.6 million to 3 million people are my estimated audience size. But if I were to cross-check it with Rascasse, which also does cross-checks with other platforms, it's showing me that the numbers is actually significantly smaller. All right. And this may have been caused, I mean, whatever the reasons, it could be maybe duplicates or multiple account users, or it's really based on the past 30 days interaction where someone just accidentally clicked on a terrace house at fake factory. I mean, whatever it is, if I were to build my plans around this audience and saying that I need to go after this broad audience itself, it may require a significant amount of money. All right, if I'm really starting from scratch and I want to go after this audience, it will require a significant amount of money to really go after all of them, right? Which sometimes it doesn't make sense, right? I mean, even FMCG companies and all with their millions and millions of ringgit won't have the amount of resources to go after this audience. They need to do further analysis. I mean, so a quick tip over here. I mean, it's really understanding what your reach curve is and your serve spend to impact response function, right? To understand how then does your spends equate to the effectiveness of your media spends. Your reach, right? Okay, so another common mistake is really targeting too broad. Another one would be also if you target too niche, it will be a problem as well, because I do see a lot of people who have, especially for those who have very little resources to start with, they try to do too many things at once. So instead of going through the funnel of building awareness, acquiring them, engaging with them, then converting them, a lot of them jump straight into trying to do everything towards the end of the funnel, right? They're trying to build awareness, they're trying to acquire, they try to engage, they try to convert. That means you've probably seen ads like this out there from across different industries, right? The first ad that you see is, come buy me, I'm 20% off, and I'm the best, right? The kind of generic ad. So if someone who have never heard of your brand before, most likely they won't take any action out of it. All right. And that will be a wasted effort because you're trying to target too niche of an audience. You're going after, you have narrowed your audience too much already to be very targeted to them, but you're trying also at the same time to do too much to them. All right. So that can be a problem as well. All right. But the other one part about targeting too niche is that if you go too small, you may not have enough people at the end of your funnel to get enough people in. All right, I mean, take for example BMW over here. BMW, they sold only about 10,000 vehicles in the whole of 2021 across all their different brands. But if I look into Rascasse, how many people are interested in BMW? They have about 4.1 million people now. 4.1 billion doesn't mean that they paid for everything, right? This is something that has been built up for a long time. And you can see the trends as well. It's not something that suddenly boom, went up straight. This is something that they've built up over a long period of time, and to make sure that they have enough people who are engaging with the brand at all times, because they realize that the motivation behind people buying BMW is so that they become an envy of everybody else. People who don't have a BMW want a BMW, and people who want a BMW and got the BMW are, in a way, they feel proud. They feel that they are the envy of maybe they have their peers and the people who want the BMW. I mean, so they understand the motivation of why people will want to buy a BMW. So they need to have enough people who have interest in the brand. So this is a strategy that BMW may take. I mean, it may be a strategy that maybe the high-end developers may want to look into as well, right? You want, in order to get enough people to buy into your high-end development, you need to have enough people who want that high-end development, so that the people who buy it will feel that, all right, I mean, everywhere I hear, everyone's talking me that, wow, that's a nice place. I wish one day I could own it. I wish one day I would stay in it and all. And then maybe then it will create that word of mouth that keeps going that, all right, I want to buy it now, or they want to strive to at least buy it, right? I mean, that could be a strategy on its own already. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. The other one would be, another common mistake that I see marketers may make is the communication that is not targeted to the specific audience, right? So, and this is really coming from my own experiences as well, where I've seen not developers, but marketers having one target audience, but for that one target audience, they create like 3, 4, sometimes, I mean, the education group that I work with, they had almost 20 different campaign ads going after that same audience. All right. And it became really confusing for the audience, because on one side, they see that, oh, they talk about one pain point, another one, they talk about different pain point, but only one of the pain points is relevant to me. All the other pain points is not relevant to me. And the moment I stop interacting with this brand, with this ad and all, Facebook or the digital platforms are telling me that, hey, you're not interested in this brand at all. Then they start showing you less, right? So then that becomes another mistake if you have communication that is not targeted enough. All right. So on the other hand, if I were to break down this audience, instead of having it broad, I break down into, I mean, I'm just making this up, right? By age group, by gender, by what their motivation is. Like, for instance, people who are about to get married, people who are into cryptos, people who are into motherhood, or people thinking about retirement, and I have targeted ads to them. Imagine what a difference that would make. So take, for example, over here, if I know that I'm going after the 25 to 34-year-old who are interested in cryptos, in gaming, etc., I can serve them an ad that shows them a gaming room in the condo or in the house. I mean, what a perfect gaming room would look like, right? I mean, that would spur on different things, right? I would think about, oh wow, if I look at what I'm playing with right now, I wish I could. And they may want to click to find out more. Or if I'm I know somebody who's looking into pregnancies and starting families, etc., I would serve them an ad of what a baby room could look like. Right. In fact, it may not just be a picture. In fact, if they come over to the showrooms, I can have different iterations or different virtual rooms to let them experience what a baby room would look like, what a gaming room would look like, what a retirement home would look like, etc. Because you are talking really to different people. All right. And this is where you can think about how then should I differentiate my campaigns, the way how I go to market with someone. And that's what data can help us with. All right, and I've covered this just now. So understanding the different media platforms, and so a common mistake is they assume that if I have one brand and another brand, I can go with the same media, I will get similar results. Whereas in reality, it will be very different media consumption habits. And it's clearly see here, right? The people who are interested in terrace houses are very different versus the people who are interested in apartments over here. All right, so I won't look into it. Another common mistake that I see, and this one is, I think it's painful, but I see a lot of people making this mistake, is they're playing in a very competitive space in and out of the industry. That means they're going after the same people, using the same interest targeting, which is high competition, which you end up spending way more money than what you should, versus looking into what other interests that I can go after them. I'm still talking to the same audience, but I'm just not buying the same keywords, right? Because I mean, I'm human, right? I'm not just interested in condos, apartments, shopping malls, investment. This is not my whole life. Right? I'm Samuel. I'm interested in condominiums. I'm interested in apartments, but I'm also interested in tacos. I'm also interested in Burger King. I eat a lot of McDonald's as well. I'm interested in playing football. I'm interested in Liverpool, or okay, maybe not Liverpool, but Newcastle, right? So I mean, there are a lot of other things that I'm also interested in that I may not have considered before. So in a way, how can I use data to tell me what other things which are potentially low in competition, high interest, high reach that I can look into, and I can. Okay, I'm just going to show you, right? So yesterday I did a couple of screenshots, and this were because I was doing a bit of research on the property side of things, right? So in the few hours itself, I was hit by many real estate ads, and I went to click on, just out of curiosity, right? What were the interest targeting that they were using, right? And you can see it's very similar across, and these are 4 different property developers, but they are using very similar audience targeting. So there's, okay, like Massing is actually,
What platform is this?
this Facebook.
Facebook. Oh, okay.
So if you do not know, right? So on Facebook, if you see an ad, you can click on the 3 buttons, and you click on it, and you can click and understand, why am I seeing this ad? You can click on why am I seeing this ad? It will show you why you're being targeted for the ad. Right? So this is why you are probably seeing the ad, because the advertiser is buying these interest groups. All right. And this could be the reason why your cost is also increasing, because if I'm seeing this ad, all these 4 developers are actually fighting for my attention, right? At the same time, and they're all bidding on the same interest targeting. So it's really, which is more relevant, which is who's going to be paying more, and also so all these things happening on the background in real time, right? But if I want to differentiate myself and instantly reduce my costs, and that's where you can use tools like even SEMrush and other things to understand the interest, understand whatever keywords and all. How else can I target my audience with a different set of interest targeting? Still talking to the same people, but not spending as much, right? So going after the low competition interest targets. So that's straight away one way I can really instantly reduce my spends, and still reduce my spends, going after the same audience, getting my objectives met. All right, so that's one. And last but not least is, I think the most common mistake is really also not challenging your agency with the right questions. I mean, I've worked with agencies before. I've worked with, at the agency with agencies and all. It's really trying to find out. And in fact, most of the agencies want to be challenged, because when you ask them the right challenge, that's how they also understand what you are looking for and how you can even spur them. So I mean, take for example over here, I'm also making this up, right? Assuming an agency comes in and say that we propose for you to use Chef One for your event. And the reason why we would choose Chef One is because he's got 1 million followers on Instagram. He's been on this show. Other property developers are also using Chef One in their cooking shows and all, right? Therefore, you should be using this. But if you were to ask your agency these questions, right? And question them back, right? I mean, what's the profile of the people who are interested in him? How does this profile overlap with the profile of my target audience? And how will he add value to my event? I mean, how I know will it generate leads or sales? Will we be able to I wouldn't say guarantee, but how are you able to show me that this is the right choice for me to make? What other independent data can verify the data instead of you taking the agency's data, or even an agency taking another agency's data to showing to me, the represented agency showing to me what this data is from? Is there any other independent data source that I can use to qualify that this is the right choice for me? So all these things are questions that you should be asking your agencies, not just maybe from influencer standpoint, but even your media agency, your digital marketing agency. Question them, ask them, how can I verify? What other data sources is being used to come up with your recommendations? You're showing me that Facebook is saying that these are the people who are interested in me, but my Google is saying it's a different answer. How can I reconcile the difference in my understanding of my two different consumer profiles? So these are things that you can use to challenge back your agencies, right? So that's one common mistake that I see a lot of marketers do make, right? Because they just accept what agencies tell them. So I mean, having a tool like Rascasse, of course, will help you to validate this kind of questions, right? Because Rascasse will be able to tell me out of the past 12 months, there's 150,000 people who are interested in Chef One. It's not that 1 million people. If I were to cross-check it with the people who are interested in terrace houses, there's only 50,000 of them are interested in both. And the profile of them are really more female. And I mean, age group-wise, it's about the age group that I'm going after. So it may be the right fit for me, but I need to drill it further. All right. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that data can show you, but I mean, I understand it's taking up a lot of time already, right? But just to summarize real quick over here, what we've talked about so far, I think we need to embrace that the world we know is changing much faster than what we can imagine. At the same time, so we need to embrace what technology can help us with to help understand this world and help to anticipate and plan for this world that is changing much faster than we can imagine. We need to embrace things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, etc. Things, technology that can help us understand the data that we have on hand as well to help our business thrive. That's the first point. The second point is we will need to understand and we need to make sure that the customer or the consumer is the boss. I mean, they need to be at the center of everything that we do. Big businesses that I've seen that have tried in the pandemic and all, they understand this really well because they understand for them to go after the customer audience, that the target audience they want, they need to understand their target audience better and what their motivations are so that they can be relevant and fit into their life. You can't force your way in. You need to find a way to pull them in. All right. And the third point I'd like to make is data is a key enabler in giving your business the clarity it needs to grow. Right. And that's where the marketing strategy is.
Yeah, that's actually the most important thing. So out of 7 common mistake that you shared, how many you have picked from the list? You don't have to answer here, okay? And just think from yourself and then talk to your own department. And perhaps you can actually talk to the account manager that actually invited you to join this webinar.